Australia has more camels than Egypt. They also have more sheep than people.
Daddy wasn't finding a bow wow. Daddy wasn't finding a bow wow. I love my little cat. I'm very fond of that. I'd rather have a big bow wow 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 wow. Daddy
Hello, and
wasn't
welcome to the Mochiverse.
finding
I'm
a
Linette.
bow
And
wow.
I'm Skip.
And actually, it's so funny. Australia has 3 times more sheep than people. Isn't that crazy? And I've heard that
That's
fact.
crazy.
Yeah, I've heard that fact before. And so when I was writing this little fact for the beginning, I went in and I just wanted to make sure it was really true. So I went and found it again. And then I found a list of other countries that have more sheep than people.
People.
Yeah. So there's a pretty good list.
Oh, yeah.
So these countries also have more sheep than people. Mauritania, Iceland, Ireland, Namibia, Uruguay, Wales, which that's not too surprising,
Yeah.
Mongolia, New Zealand, and the Falkland Islands.
Wow.
They all have more
Hmm.
sheep than people.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, I wonder, maybe we'd be better off with more sheep than people.
Could be. Well, there'd be an argument that we have some sheep. But
Yeah,
anyway.
it's right. Somebody would say it's better than having so many sheeple. Yeah, whatever.
uh,
All right, so
uh,
folks, we're here again for some more true or BS facts. We're gonna finish up our two-parter, which is like this is like what, 2B?
to be or not to be. No. Okay.
It's like a four-part, three-parter. That's all right. Yeah, so I figured we'd just crack into it and have a little fun again.
Okay.
Do you want to do the first one?
Sure. Why not? True or false? The Heimlich maneuver wasn't invented until the 1970s.
That sounds
True or
right.
false?
I think it's true.
True. Yeah.
Yeah.
Henry Heimlich published his first paper on the subject in 1974.
Mm.
Up to that point, choking was primarily dealt with slapping a person on the back, a practice that is hugely discouraged today. Also used for choking, cutting a hole in the trachea,
Yep.
which is extreme. Yeah.
Oh yeah. But they
Yeah.
still, I think they still, like with babies, they still hit him on the back.
Yeah. 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 Because you really can't do a Heimlich on a baby. Yeah. So,
No, no,
yeah.
no.
Yeah.
And the Heimlich, yeah. I mean, the Heimlich is, it seems really strange that people were only doing it since the 70s, but I mean, like he just, like he developed the actual technique
Mhm.
uh to do it correctly. I'm sure somebody thought of the connection between the diaphragm pushing some air and that helping with choking. I'm sure somebody did something that kind of looked like it before that, wouldn't you
Yeah,
think?
if you become familiar with, if you're familiar with the anatomy, I would have thought, like you, that they would have figured that out earlier.
At least by accident.
Yeah, yeah, at least by accident. Yeah,
Somebody's
sure.
choking, they fall over
Yeah,
and happen to hit the chair. Because they tell you, so part of the Heimlich maneuver is if you're by yourself, you use the back of a chair
right.
to
Hmm.
do the thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I did the Heimlich on Bev a couple of times when she was a toddler.
Yeah. Hmm.
It was kind of weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's an interesting thing. We were talking about yesterday when Richard's parents were visiting, we were talking about medical stuff briefly. I got to dazzle with some facts about, old medical things. They had never heard the drowning, the bellows with the drowning and the smoke up the ass.
Oh,
They were
yeah.
they were quite amused by that.
Yeah.
I think they thought I was a little bit full of shit, but I'm like, no, 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 he really
It's
was a thing.
true.
Not for a super long time, but yes, they really did blow specifically tobacco smoke.
Yeah.
And I think she said, like, did it, I mean, why would they do that? Did it work? Like, why would they think about it? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
who's the first person to be like, you know what, this person drowned. Let's get the tobacco smoke and a bellows. Like they must have just the way I thought of it was there must have been a person who had drowned and they were just like, let's try everything.
Yeah.
And they tried everything. And then when they did that, it just kind of, so the person just came around because of everything else they had tried.
Yeah, probably a reaction to having a bellow stuck up their butt, so
Yeah, it's just like, whoa, you know.
yeah. Hello.
Yeah,
Yeah.
depending on how enthusiastic they were about it and how roughly
Right.
they did it.
Yeah.
And also that was like I don't know if we talked about it before, but I know I talked about it on my previous podcast. There were certain ways back in the old days to tell if somebody was really dead, if you were going to bury them.
Mhm.
And I mean, you can imagine that was the reason for wakes and things like that. You have a 3-day wake just to make sure the person's going to start decomposing before you bury
Right.
them.
Yeah.
But also like they had like legitimate techniques that they wrote down and tried to make sure the person was really dead before they put them in the ground. Like, you just like poking them with needles and things
Mhm.
like that. And the bellows and the smoke was one of them.
Oh, wow.
And if they didn't react to that, they were probably dead, I guess.
Yeah.
I guess.
Okay.
Okay. So yeah, the next one is about musical instruments. True or false, musical instruments were not invented until the early 5th century. Well, that sounds false.
Yeah, it does sound false. Yeah.
I mean, for crying out loud, when you think about, I mean, the first musical instruments, the notes that I have here talked about like flutes and things, but it doesn't mention drums. I mean, I'm sure that drums were
Oh,
before
yeah.
anything
Yeah.
else, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm sure drums are just absolutely probably the first ones, but I think that flutes were the first ones that they found in
Right.
excavations.
Yeah.
So the oldest musical instrument ever found dates back 40,000 years. And they found like flutes made of bird bones, 30 to 40,000 years. And it makes sense that you would make like a musical instrument out of animal bones because once the marrow is gone, it is like a hollow tube.
Yeah, I would imagine it'd be like you're cleaning out the marrow and
Hmm.
you blow on it, and all of a sudden you get music, and hey,
It
wait a minute.
it makes a noise, yeah, and you're
Yeah,
like,
you go,
hey,
hey, hey, what? Hey, this is cool. I don't know what it is, but I like the sound of it.
yeah. And unfortunately, I'm picturing in my head that caveman movie with Ringo. They're just like sitting around a fire, like really bad cavemen stereotypes, and he's just like, oog, Man, do you remember how many times we watched that stupid movie when I was a kid?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I actually found an article when I was looking at those musical instruments that talked about a 60,000-year-old flute that was made from the thigh bone of a bear, which is like probably big.
Yeah, probably big. Yeah.
That must have been pretty amazing. Yeah, but yeah, musical instruments, definitely wind instruments and drums, and then stringed instruments are quite old. So we've always been musical. That's pretty cool. It's pretty cool to think about.
Yep.
So the next one is about cornflakes. Not sitting on a cornflake, but the primary use of cornflakes. So true or false? Cornflakes were originally developed to suppress the urge to masturbate. Had you ever heard this before?
No, but I start to think about it. I say maybe because they're so difficult to eat. I don't know.
Well,
Just
it is.
distraction. I don't know.
Yeah, right. It is true. And this comes from, I believe it's the 1800s. There were quite a few specialists in this field of wellness. One of the major ones was Harvey Kellogg.
Yeah.
And another one was, his last name was Graham. He was the guy who invented graham crackers.
Yep.
And this was part of a philosophy of wellness that focused on their theory that bland food was the most healthy for you because the most unhealthy thing for you was like lustful thoughts. There was a lot of religion in it, and one of their main philosophies or one of their main beliefs was that lustful thoughts were what caused all of your ailments. And, like you
Yeah.
could kind of understand why somebody would think that because, people do stupid stuff when they're distracted by those kinds of feelings. People do
Yeah.
stupid stuff when they're distracted by all kinds of different emotions like anger and, excitement and things like that. So I think that these guys felt that the best way to be healthy was to reduce your level of any kind of excitement.
Yeah. That's probably more well founded. It just, if you think about that, that tracks in terms of, having high blood pressure or in a constant state of excitement, regardless of what the excitement is, which is not good for your health because adrenaline gets generated and puts
Mm.
stress on all your organs and
Cortisol, all of that
yeah,
stuff.
all that.
Yeah. And so I think they were just a little misdirected in thinking that it was, sexual thoughts that were the problem.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think they were generally trying to do that. And so, yeah, John Harvey Kellogg, he was a weird dude. He had one of those wellness spas. He
Mm-hmm.
set it up it was in Battle Creek, Michigan. And it was one of those places that really still exists today where super rich people would go and do all the trendy wellness cures. And at the time, those trendy wellness cures involved a lot of like water cures, which were either hot or mostly cold water.
Yeah.
You would just
Yeah.
like dunk yourself in cold baths and all that kind of crap. And the bland diet was a huge part of it. And so Kellogg, with his brother, developed cornflakes as a cereal while they were trying to come up with, a bland food that people could eat and be healthy. And it just happened to be taken on as a popular thing.
Was it part of the thing is he was a really big fan of enemas?
Huge fan of Minimum. This guy, that was his thing. He's like, so no alcohol, no excitement, no spicy or flavorful foods. You didn't want to be like doing things like dancing or talking to women if you were a man and things like that. But a huge thing that he also felt was that enemas were like just a cure-all. And these people who went to these wellness centers would have like multiple times a day yogurt enemas and also coffee enemas.
That's a rough one.
I mean, damn. Like, and also like why was he interested in coffee? Because didn't he know that coffee was stimulating? I'll have to look into that one. I think he was a
Yeah.
little bit misguided. But yeah, it's John Harvey Kellogg he was
Yeah.
a strange dude. He
Yeah.
was also like, he was obsessed with abstinence too.
Yeah. Yeah.
He was married and he adopted like a whole bunch of children and reportedly never had sex with his wife. So, you know, live how you want to live, I guess. But
Yep.
damn.
Yep. Yep.
So that's that one.
Oh, on a brighter note.
Yeah. Yeah, give us a nice upbeat one
Yeah.
next.
Hey, listen, true or false?
Mhm.
More than 200 people have died attempting to climb Mount Everest. I told you it was lighter, a higher purpose.
Yeah, very higher, much higher. Yes, it is true.
Yeah.
And actually, a lot of the bodies are still there.
Yeah. I believe it. Yes, that's right. I've heard that before. Yeah.
Yeah, the problem is it's just too difficult to bring like an
Hmm.
expedition there to remove the bodies. It's too dangerous. I mean,
Right.
it's dangerous enough to climb yourself. If you die up there because of the danger, because of oxygen, because of cold, it would be even more difficult to go and retrieve your body. And most of the people who climb Everest are aware that if they die, they're going to stay there. And some people have been retrieved, but a lot of them are still there. And it's a lot of people would think it's morbid and gruesome, but it is also, I guess it's very like, it's something that the other climbers, I think they take inspiration from, and they also like, they treat the bodies with like a lot of respect, the other climbers, and they give them, that they're like almost, they're like little milestones on the trail.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
know how far they are based on the person that they found. I don't know if you've
I,
ever seen pictures of, have you ever seen pictures of these bodies?
no, I haven't. But if you think about perspective, and you talk about folks in conversations, you'll say, hey, you know what? I want to die in my sleep, or
Hmm.
something like this here. Perhaps from their perspective, they die doing what they want to do.
Yeah, doing something they love. Yeah.
So maybe they look at it as a higher purpose. I
Yeah.
don't know, but you can understand if they have a passion for something. Like some people die on the tennis court, or
Hmm.
die swimming in the ocean, or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
Whatever your passion is, and imagine that the challenge and the passion of climbing the mountain has an appeal for some people.
Yeah, I think it does. And it's actually sort of inspiring to look at them. I have looked at a lot of the pictures.
Mhm.
And there's a couple of things that are striking. One thing that's very striking is how peaceful they look, because a lot of them, a lot of times when you die of exposure, hypothermia, or oxygen issues, it's usually going to sleep, you know.
Yeah.
And so a lot of these people look like they're just resting
Mm.
briefly. And most of them are dressed in very bright clothing because as you're climbing a mountain in the snow, a lot of
Yeah.
like the snowsuits and everything are very bright. So it's almost like cheerful because there's such bright colors.
Yeah.
And there was one body that had like long hair,
Hmm.
and the hair would just like be blowing in the wind, and the people would talk about it as like a milestone.
Wow.
They'd
Yeah.
see her hair
Mm.
like blowing in the wind, and it was kind of like beautiful to them.
Yep.
It's very interesting to look at, and honestly not gruesome at all, even though like these are bodies that some of them have mummified because of the dry and cold
Hmm.
conditions. And some of them are partially skeletonized, but they don't, when I look at it, I'm not like, oh God, yuck, it's like a dead body. I don't know. It's a different feeling when you look at something like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. That's very interesting to me.
Yep. Yeah, you
Okay.
take the next one.
Yeah, so true or false, aspirin was originally invented to treat erectile dysfunction. What do you think?
I I don't know. I don't think so.
No,
Yeah.
no,
Yeah.
it wasn't. But the drug Viagra was originally invented to treat heart disease while they were developing sildenafil, which is the ingredient in Viagra. That was in the 80s, and it was developed as a heart and blood pressure medication. And during the studies, they discovered the unexpected side effect in their male patients.
Only lasted for 4 hours. No.
Yeah, well, that's bad.
Yeah.
That's bad. You want to seek medical attention if that happens to you
Yep.
guys. Um, and it actually still is used for pulmonary arterial hypertension, but there's so many other drugs out there that can treat that. It's not used as often.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's very popular. And aspirin is another interesting one because the company that marketed aspirin is the same company that gave us heroin. So that's fun.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Like,
All right.
thanks.
Listen, I want to take the next one. Okay.
Yes. Okay.
Okay. The next one, true or false?
Yeah.
The kazoo was invented by a man named Alabama Vest.
It sounds fake.
Actually, it's true.
Okay.
It's difficult to verify this, but the belief is that an African American named Alabama Vest invented the buzzing instrument.
Okay.
There's no documentation, to prove this claim, but it's generally believed that he created the instrument.
Okay.
Similar improvised instruments have been existed before.
Mm-hmm.
The first patent for the kazoo initially actually called a toy trumpet, which actually makes sense,
Oh yeah,
was
it does.
filed about 30 years later. Fun fact, the membrane of the kazoo is used to create the buzzing sound is often called gold beater's skin. It is
Yes.
made from the intestine of animals, usually cattle or oxen. And I want to tell you about, and it's called gold beater skin because it was originally used as for the manufacture of gold leaf.
Yeah.
Now, the reason I wanted to take this particular fact was that I was in the Bunk Hillbillies when I was a kid,
Yeah.
and my instrument was the kazoo.
That's so cool.
And because it was kazoo, generally not, with the Bunk Hillbillies, there was a kazoo, and they had a drum, which is basically a wash drum with a stick sticking up with a string, and that was, and they would play that. And the only real instruments were, if you can consider that, would be the kazoo and the guitar. And I didn't get to be in parades or anything because I played the kazoo, but that's really why I thought of it anyway. So,
Now, tell me you weren't like 16 when you did this. How old were you?
11 or 12 at the
Okay.
most. At the
That would have been
most,
that would have been even funnier. I
Yeah,
was in a
yeah,
marching band playing the
yeah,
kazoo at 16.
yeah. And it's funny. I worked at I was working as a job. Obviously, I was 10, 11, 12, something like that. And I was running an elevator in a apartment complex that my dad was doing some construction work on.
Yeah.
And I got paid for doing it. And I used that money to buy the shirt and the hat so that I could be in the parades, which, by the
Yeah.
way, I was never in the parade, so I never got to wear the shirt and the hat in the
Oh,
parades. Poor me,
oh,
right?
poor
Uh,
you.
anyway, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. So.
I don't think I'd have to think. I don't think I've been in any parades either. Have I been in any parades? I don't
No,
think
I don't
so.
think so. No,
No.
this they were actually on TV a lot. Rex Trailer Show.
Oh.
They would have the Bunker Hill Billies on the Rex Trailer Show.
What kind of songs did they play? Was it like,
We are the we are the Bunker Hill Billies from Breeds to Bunker Hillies.
oh
You
my
know,
God.
we are the Charlestown is our hometown. I remember that part of it. So
Wow. So, I mean, it's funny because like when you think of Bunker Hill and you think of Charleston and all those areas, like at least the way that I grew up and the
mhm.
history I learned, you would expect them to be playing like, sort of like Revolutionary War music. Like you
No,
just be like they
it's
make you play a fife or
yeah,
something.
yeah. No, it was nothing like that. That's what was interesting. The group worked out of the boys' club,
Yeah.
and I remember, as I say, I remember that the one I do remember was this, like an aluminum or tin wash tub that had a stick sticking out the mid of it, and
Oh
had a
yeah.
string that went to the top of the stick, and you could play that
Yeah.
like some kind of an instrument to make some kind of noise.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
that was kind of a cool. Whoever decided to do it, that's a kind of cool use of whatever equipment they had without buying musical instruments. Which that was the whole thrust of it.
If you're using kazoos and like wash thing, like I know exactly what you mean. It's like the corrugated
No, this is yeah. They had one of those too, but this they would have yes. Now that I think about it, they had one guy that would take that scrub and wash thing and
yeah,
play on that. Like would have like a clacker and play it on that.
yeah.
Um,
And the kazoo. I'm surprised you guys didn't have jugs. Like it
yeah,
sounds to
they
me
might
like, yeah, it
have.
sounds to me like the name hillbillies is very appropriate with those
Yes,
instruments.
yes, yes. And what was interesting in a small town like that was that which we were a suburb of Boston, the boys club had a lot of things going on for kids.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, a lot of programs, a lot of activities, and a lot of mentoring. So it was pretty cool. So anyway,
Yeah, that's awesome.
yeah,
I like the boys club, the boys and girls club. I mean, I put my daughter in there for a while and it was very handy. And I think that by the time she was a kid, I think the activities would have been good, but I think what happened was they had a lot of like kids for volunteers that worked with it. So they kind of just
yeah,
let the kids roam around more than actually doing structured activities. I
yeah.
think, at the time, I was like, oh, this is so good. I've got her in the Boys and Girls Club. It's such a nice place to do, cool
Mhm.
activities for the kids. And I think she ended up telling me later, she's like, yeah, we were just like running around town at age 10. Like nobody watched us. I'm like, oh shit. Okay. That's Salem for you.
Yeah, and well, again, there was a lot of activities. They had one day of the week. I think I told you about this before. They would run serials from the 30s and 40s, like
Oh yeah.
Batman, the Phantom, Captain Marvel, stuff like that. And then upstairs, they had these different rooms. They had uh, a room where you could learn how to do, they had Boy Scouts, they had a teletype, I want to say a teletype, but you could do, what they used to do, I can't even think of it
Oh,
now,
like Morse
when
code?
Morse code.
Yeah.
They had one that was all Morse code. And there were several different ones. They had the radio group, they had the photography group, they had all kinds of activities for the kids to keep them occupied. And one thing which I just flashed on this, which it would just be absurd. You would never see it nowadays. Was that in the swimming pools, the boys no bathing suits.
Oh,
You know, yeah, you wouldn't see that nowadays, obviously.
no. Yeah, they had a lot of good activities at that place I went to, the House of Seven Gables Settlement, whatever that was, my after school program or my daycare program. I
Yeah,
remember doing all kinds of cool stuff there. They had like a little drama program, they had arts and crafts, they had like a jungle gym we could play on, but they also did like, we would sit down and make stuff.
Yeah, and that was your after school thing. At times for the kids that their parents would run late, they take naps,
Yeah.
and they had. I remember the woman there, which you probably remember her name. I don't remember her name, and she was like, take care of feeding the kids, have a
Yeah.
snack or something,
Oh
So
yeah, that place was awesome. And we used to go across the street to the actual House of Seven Gables
mhm.
because next to the House of Seven Gables there was like some sort of a staff building.
Yeah,
And whenever we did our cooking classes, we would go there.
yeah,
It's just so funny. And the Pepper Company was there too, the candy place. We used to
yeah,
go over to the Pepper Company sometimes.
yeah. I mean, they had a lot of activities going on. And it wasn't the later on, and I think when you were living in Salem, Beverly would go to the YMCA, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
yeah. We used to like the Y.
yeah,
Yeah,
and when you think about as working parents, childcare is expensive, and it's one thing when they're really young and babies and they really need somebody to take care of them, but when they get a little bit older and they need an after school program,
yeah.
and they had a lot of after school programs, and they have to keep the kids from wandering the streets. So, which is not, it wasn't like a big city, but I think it was they had some good things going on for the people of the city.
Yeah, good things. True or false? When dinosaurs roamed the earth, days were just 23 hours long.
Really?
Yeah, it is true.
Wow.
Um,
Huh.
yeah, and that makes sense because so the Earth's rotation is slowing over time because of the gravitational pull of the moon. There's no real consensus, but some scientists believe during the time of the dinosaurs, a day may have been just 23 hours long, and a year had about 372 days. And what I take away from all of that is days have 23 hours and there's 372 days in a year and might have been totally different. The conclusion I make is that time is a construct and can we please stop daylight savings time now? Thank you.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely.
Stupid daylight savings time that they voted out. When did they vote that out? Like
Ah,
7 years ago? Like,
well, it's interesting because there's a bill that's been in the Senate for at least 2 years, if not longer. That was put out by Marco Rubio, and it didn't get through the Congress because at the time the Congress didn't have enough of a majority to pass it, and it's languished. And who knows if they'll ever do that, But
I
yeah,
can't think of anybody who likes it, so I don't understand.
yeah, I don't know.
you
No,
know
no.
and I mean the I don't know the daylight savings thing, it's just a silly thing. It just messes everybody up. I mean, I'm happy about timekeeping, but it's just
I'd say they had more important things to work on, but I doubt that.
yeah, yeah, people can't seem to agree on what's important and what's not anyway,
Yeah,
so I guess it
exactly.
doesn't, none of it matters.
Yeah.
It's just all garbage.
Okay. You want to take the next one?
Yes. True or false? Wild hippos can only be found in Africa. What do you think?
Okay. I mean, I would think true, but it's
Yeah.
probably not.
Yeah, it is now false. So they can now be found in Colombia thanks to the drug kingpin Pablo Escobar. I don't know how much you know about Pablo Escobar. I've listened to a few different podcasts from different history channels and things like that. Pablo Escobar was, I mean, he was like a drug lord
Right.
in Colombia. He was also, I think this happens a lot when you get super rich for any reason, you turn real eccentric with the things you buy.
You got nothing else to do with your money.
Yeah, and so many of them decide like, wild animals would be a great idea. It's like something all super rich people do. Like all of a sudden there's giraffes everywhere on your estate and things like that. Well, so Escobar decided he wanted hippos, and I don't think he understood anything about hippos when he wanted the hippos, but he had like his own zoo. He had a private zoo on his estate. So in the 70s, he bought four hippos and he brought them to his estate. But then, like, he died. And when he died, because of the kind of work that he did, I mean, it was like everything was just abandoned. This is all criminal stuff. Nobody wants that land. And so a lot of the estate was abandoned, including the zoo, and the hippos just wandered
Hmm.
and bred. which is like, listen, if you're gonna bring hippos to your zoo, do you really have to bring like breeding pairs with you to a country they're not native to? That's just
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, whatever. But yeah, and presumably the other animals too. I don't know what happened to the other animals in the zoo. I don't know what kind of animals he had, but presumably they also wandered off or hopefully just didn't die inside the zoo. But
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, so they were left unattended and they just roamed free and bred, and their nickname is now the cocaine hippos. They're an invasive species, and as of 2019, it was estimated the population was around 100, and they're causing problems with the ecosystem because they're aggressive. They're aggressive to people, they're aggressive to other animals. And I think that a lot of people didn't know this at the time. Even though they're mostly vegetarian, herbivores, I guess you could say if it's an animal, uh, they will they will attack people and other animals, and they will eat them if they need to, you know. And they're very powerful and they're big and strong. So it's
Oh
like,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
and super aggressive. Like they're not nice.
Hmm.
That little girl who wanted one for Christmas didn't know what she was getting into.
Yeah.
Um so they tried to do, now they're still working on it. They tried to do like, trying to catch them and sterilize them and trying to cull them, but they're still causing a problem, which is, across the world, invasive species are a problem, especially like in Australia, there's a lot of issues with invasive species.
Yeah.
I know they had problems with different kinds of rabbits. They had problems with emus. They had problems with pigs, especially because pigs, in parts of us, I learned this from Steve Irwin. They were like an invasive species somebody brought over.
Yeah.
And over here, I mean, in Florida, there's a lot of invasive plant species that people have brought.
Yes. True.
Trees and plants that do not belong here that have ruined like the natural flora. So
Mhm.
it's a mess. It's always a mess. And
Yeah.
there are still people trying to work to fix that. I mean, the first one that comes to mind is the kudzu, which somebody thought was a good idea. Brought over kudzu to, not necessarily big problem in Florida, but isn't that a Georgia thing? The kudzu?
Yeah. I think so. Yeah.
It's like a vine. It's like a vine that's like
Oh yeah.
really
Yeah.
hardy and it's super invasive. And if you look, it just takes over. It just like chokes out trees and power lines and all this stuff everywhere. I think it's Georgia. It's one of the southern states.
The same thing in a lot of the lakes in New Hampshire,
Mhm.
and they have a particular grass that becomes invasive to the lakes. And what would happen is that people go from one lake to the other, and they could transfer it to another lake. And what the way they've been controlling it is that with the boat ramps, you have to clean off your boat before you
Oh,
get into the lake because
yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense. Because all that stuff is sticking to your boat. That's like what happened to your lawn when you were using the landscaping company. They were
yes,
bringing all the weeds from
yep,
the other yards. You're
yep,
like, you
they
know what?
do.
I'll just do it myself.
Yep, exactly. Yep. Yeah, it's sort of funny. It's the same thing with one of my neighbors, guy who was telling him, I'm not going to mow with all this bugleweed, and my neighbor's a little bit too nice to tell him that you probably brought it from somewhere else.
Yeah.
So,
That's funny.
yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so hippos. I put some of these little facts at the end about the hippos because they are interesting. Their sweat glands excrete this pink stuff that works as a sunscreen for them.
But that'd be cool.
Yeah, it comes out of their pores and it
Mm.
comes out pink and then it turns brown like after it's being exposed to the sun.
Well, I wouldn't
And
want pink anyway, but
oh
yeah.
no, we don't like you don't need pink. But also their milk is pink.
Oh,
Yeah. It's just hippos are,
strawberry quick.
yeah, exactly. Oh God. The least favorite of the quicks.
Yeah.
Oh, we were talking, of course, because we're always talking about New England things, and how they don't have it here and it's not familiar here. And I didn't realize like that the coffee milk thing was a New England thing. How people in
Yeah.
other states didn't really like drink coffee milk.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that either. Yeah.
Yeah. It's and it's like Massachusetts and Rhode Island are like big on their coffee milk. We always had it, and it was one of the options in school too, is coffee milk.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Chocolate milk or coffee milk. Yeah.
Yeah,
Hmm.
and we had strawberry, but nobody wanted strawberry.
Yeah.
We want
Nobody wants a straw.
No, it's
Yeah.
gross.
Yeah.
And I would never drink that stuff now. I don't like milk, but I would probably drink coffee milk because, and also coffee ice cream was very popular, at least when I was a kid.
Well, coffee ice cream, yeah, I could deal with that. Although I don't think you'd find that down here, but you might be
No,
able to, you know,
maybe
so
maybe the coffee ice cream was a New England thing too. We
yeah,
just really love
probably. Yeah.
we like our coffee flavored things. We
Yeah,
don't
for
really
some
want
reason.
strong coffee. We just want
Yep.
coffee flavored things
Yep.
up there.
Next one, true or false?
Mm.
There is a football field in the basement of the U.S. Supreme Court.
Football field. Probably
Really?
not, right?
Yeah, no, no, false. Yeah,
Okay.
but there is a basketball court on the fifth floor. Also, which I already knew this, and I think
Hmm.
most people did, is there are two bowling alleys in the White House.
Yes.
The original one was Truman put in 1947, and then it was moved to the executive office building, which is Eisenhower's executive office, which is part of the White House compound.
Hmm.
The second one was built by Nixon
Yep.
in a single lane alley.
It was debated whether it was 1973 or earlier. I just
Yeah.
found different sources.
And there's a famous photo of Nixon bowling.
Yes.
It may actually have been at the older bowling alley,
Yeah.
as
Do
is
you,
always the case. Yeah.
oh yes. Now, do you know that photo?
I do not know that photo.
You should Google it real quick. It's kind of a funny picture. It's like just him bowling and there's like wallpaper on the walls in that bowling alley. It's like a really iconic picture, but it's in the apartment of the dude in The Big Lebowski. He has that photo.
Oh, okay. All right.
But it's like a famous photo. It's just you can Google it very easily by just typing in Nixon bowling. It was like it was like a publicity shot, I'm sure.
Of
Um,
course. Just like him with Elvis. Yeah.
with Elvis, yes. And maybe they even bowled together.
Yeah. Could be.
All right. So, Benjamin Franklin. True or false? Benjamin Franklin has been inducted into the Kite Flyers Hall of Fame.
Okay. I'm going to say no.
Yeah, no, it's false. I mean, you would think because he did the kite with the key thing, which
Yeah.
I don't even think he actually did. I think he made his son do it, but that's a whole other thing.
Okay.
But he wasn't in the Kite Flyers Hall of Fame, but he was a member of the International Swimming Hall of Fame. This I didn't know until you put that there. Um,
Oh,
yeah. And he invented a pair of swim fins for his hands so that he could swim easier. He invented a lot of things, as we know. Benjamin Franklin was an inventor. He was kind of an everything.
yeah, he was. Yeah.
He was definitely a Renaissance man. I have some other facts about him because you can always find facts about Benjamin Franklin. He played several instruments, including violin, harp, and guitar. And I don't know if you knew about this before, but he invented an instrument called the glass harmonica, not harmonica with an H, but harmonica.
Hmm.
Have you ever heard about the glass harmonica?
No. Yeah.
It's like, so he was inspired by, he'd have a glass of wine and you know how you can like dip your finger in and
Yeah.
make the
Mm,
noise on the rim. He
yeah.
said, well, I can make an instrument like this. And so the instrument is like a series of glass discs and you wet your fingers and the discs spin and then you put your hands on it and it makes like
Hmm.
really, it's like kind of creepy sounding. It's sort of ethereal sounding, but it's kind of beautiful also. And a lot of composers composed pieces of music. He composed some music for the harmonica, but Mozart was one of the composers that did some pieces specifically for that instrument. Which Benjamin Franklin and Mozart. It's so weird to think of them as contemporaries, but they were, and they probably knew each other. They probably met at least once. But yeah, so that's pretty cool. I never really thought of him as musical. I mean, you think of him as like the bifocals guy.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
And like Poor Richard's Almanac. But he started the first volunteer fire department in Philadelphia,
Mhm.
which is very cool. He was the first postmaster general in America, and while in the position, he invented an odometer to accurately measure postal routes, which is cool. He also invented the Franklin stove, which we have one of those at the cottage.
Yeah.
Um,
Mhm.
it was is a good innovation because it is a really efficient way of heating
Yep.
as opposed to what they used to have. But he never patented any of his inventions because he felt that when you invent something, it should be for the public and it should be free, which is a lot. There are some inventors who felt that way. Nikola Tesla was one of them. I always think that's pretty cool. But yeah, so and of course he was interested in electricity. He once tenderized a turkey using electricity and electrocuted himself. There was like a little blurb about that in one article I read, and he talked about his recovery. Like he was like numb and couldn't move his limbs for like a couple of days, and he just didn't feel right for a couple of days after. But he said the turkey was like delicious.
Yeah, I'm sure it was.
Yes. And I heard once that it was actually when they were talking about what to pick for the national bird when they were becoming a country.
Turkey.
Yes, he suggested the turkey
Yeah. Yeah, I
because
heard that one too. Yeah.
he suggested the turkey was more iconic to America, even though we didn't really have the Thanksgiving thing yet. I think they already were eating a lot of turkeys.
Yeah, which is a bit ironic, and when you call somebody a turkey, it isn't necessarily a good thing.
No, and I think that probably came later when people were actually taking care of turkeys and realized how incredibly stupid turkeys are.
Yep. Yep.
They're really, really stupid. And like there was a there was a podcaster I used to listen to back in the day who, when he was a teenager, he worked on a turkey farm and he was a teenager, so he also had a samurai sword because he was into samurai swords.
Yep.
And he said how like the turkeys were really aggressive, but they were also really stupid. And so when he would go into the enclosure, he brought his sword with him because the sword was shiny and it distracted them so much that they like stopped being aggressive. They were just like looking at the sword because it was shiny. They were just like, "Oh, shiny." And they didn't bother him at that point.
Goodbye.
Goodbye. And then the last thing I wrote about Benjamin Franklin, I heard about this kind of recently. I don't know if you'd ever heard this one. So there was a house in London that Franklin lived in, and it's the Benjamin Franklin house now. And in 1998, they were doing some renovations, and they found the bones of multiple people buried in the basement.
Okay.
Yeah, and they dated these bones to around the same time that Benjamin Franklin was living in the house. So for a little while there, they were concerned that Benjamin Franklin might have been like a serial killer or something. But they did some more research, and it turns out that around the same time, like I think his landlord's daughter's something ran an anatomy school, an anatomy research school on the site. And so what they would do with an anatomy research school is you have cadavers that you're studying anatomy on. And once you're done with those cadavers, these were people who were either criminals or they were donated, like you donate your body to science. Once you're done with all of your research, the bodies are buried. And so I guess they buried them in the basement of the house.
Wow.
So nothing too nefarious there. Benjamin Franklin is not a serial killer, but still a bit creepy and weird, I think.
Yeah, pretty much. Wow. Imagine that. Think about that one.
Yeah. The first thing I imagine is if I'm living in a house and suddenly they find a bunch of bodies, and the first thing I want to be like, no, it wasn't me. I didn't do it.
Yeah.
I don't know. All these bodies are from around the same time you were living there. No, 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 no,
Yeah.
no. I promise.
No, I didn't do it. Yeah.
I don't have time to be a serial killer. Trust me. Like, I'm too busy. Do you want to start the next one?
Yeah, true or false?
Mhm.
In the 1800s, a man proclaimed himself Emperor of the United States and issued his own currency.
Yes, he certainly did.
Deja vu all over again.
Yes. So, yeah, he was Emperor Norton. We did an episode about this on my old podcast, Sofa Spuds History. He was a fascinating guy. Have you ever read anything about this guy?
No, I haven't. No.
Yeah, he was a business owner. I
Mhm.
think he was involved in shipping, and he lost like a shit ton of money because of rice. I think what he had done was it was predicted that the price of rice was a certain amount, so he bought like way too much of this rice, and then the price like took a nosedive. And so he lost like a ton of money because he had just like shiploads and shiploads of rice. So he lost his whole fortune, and I guess he kind of went crazy. Poor guy. And he just one day he just declared himself emperor. He put up proclamations. He used to give speeches all the time, and he used to march around San Francisco wearing like a uniform.
Hmm.
And at first they institutionalized him
Yeah.
because they were concerned, and at that time that's what you did with people who had mental issues. They just throw them in an insane asylum, unfortunately.
Mhm.
But then they I think they observed him rather in the institution or around that time, and they kind of determined that he was really just a harmless guy. He was kind of nice and he wasn't hurting anybody. And so they just let him out and let him be. And he made his own currency. And he tried to pay, like he would go to restaurants and bars and stuff and pay.
Mhm.
And because he kind of became like a local sort of living legend,
Yeah.
they took his money and so he got a lot of like free food and stuff just because people liked him. And he became slightly influential because he started talking about the importance of having a bridge
Yeah.
in San Francisco. And over the years, that turned into the Bay Bridge, which they then put a plaque. There's a plaque today. If you go to the Bay Bridge in San Francisco, there's a plaque with his name on it because he kind of inspired them to build the bridge. Yeah, he was a really interesting guy and kind of sweet. He proposed multiple times to Queen Victoria. She she never answered.
Yeah.
He also wrote letters to King Kamehameha of Hawaii. I think he was inviting him to come for delegations and things like that. He didn't answer either, but
Yeah.
I think he was trying to get an estate from him in Hawaii, and he he wanted to have international relations because I mean he was an emperor. He thought it was important to
Have international relations. Yes.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Like he thought out a lot of this stuff. And a lot of his proclamations were sort of civic in nature, specific to San Francisco, but he's very cute. And he also said for a while that he was the emperor of Mexico in addition to like the United States, but he then later changed that when Mexico's politics changed. I think he called himself like the protector of Mexico after that. So,
Okay.
but yeah, so and at one point, his uniform that he had created for himself was getting really worn and shabby because, I mean, he was basically a pauper. He had a little apartment that he lived in, but he basically was destitute. So the people of the town gathered money together and bought him a new uniform. And
Hmm.
also, when he actually died on the street in San Francisco. They took care of him. They brought him to the hospital, tried to save him. It couldn't be saved. But the police department and citizens of San Francisco paid for his funeral. Like he got honors at his funeral, which was nice.
Hmm.
Yeah. So
Cool. That's
Emperor
nice one.
Norton.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. If you get a chance, you should listen to that episode of Sofa Spuds History. It's still active, still live. It was a good one. I think I really enjoyed doing the research on that one back then.
Next one, true or false?
Yes.
Left-handed people live an average of 9 years longer than right-handed people. Ask a
Probably.
lefty.
Yeah, yeah, right. Escalante. It's probably false. I mean,
That's false. In fact, there's good examples of problems while with trying to interpret statistical data to
yeah,
predict outcomes.
yeah.
Didn't you do a podcast? Somebody did a podcast on the show Maintenance Phase about this sort of
Yes.
idea.
Yeah, so Michael Hobbs he's a very thorough researcher. He does
Mhm.
research on a lot of subjects, and he does a podcast called Maintenance Phase, which is mostly health and wellness related. And he did a really comprehensive episode talking about the insurance company statistics, like the statistics that those insurance companies used to determine, insurance policies, like who would
Yeah.
be insured and things like that. And a lot of it came from health statistics, which were, not interpreted in the best way. And so the problem is that those kind of standards still exist and they still exist in the medical community. They still exist with the insurance
Mm.
industry where if you're determined to be at high risk for something, your insurance costs more or you won't get
Yep.
insurance and things like that.
Mhm.
Uh, and that really sucks because a lot of those statistics are not really based in good facts and good research, and they're also misinterpreted. I mean, like you can when you're talking about statistics, you can hone in on one thing. But it's like my old physics teacher in high school used to say, did you know 100% of people who eat peanut butter will die? Yes, that is true.
Yep.
100% of people who drink water will die.
will
Like,
die.
because 100% of all of us will die. So if you nitpick a certain statistic or cherry pick a certain statistic, you can make it sound like it means whatever you like. But and Michael Hobbs was making a really good point in his episode where he was saying things like, oh, people who weigh a certain number of pounds are certain percent more likely to have cardiovascular issues. When in fact he looked at the data, and it's also true that a higher percentage of people who are from Connecticut are likely to have a higher percentage of certain cardiovascular problems, or a certain percentage of people who grow wildflowers are certain percentage more likely to have like colon cancer. You know what I mean? It's like you can just make things say by taking real data, and you can turn it into what to say whatever you like to get to something you want, I guess. Which is
Well,
like
yeah, I mean,
charging
it's
more money
just
for insurance.
right. Yeah, exactly. It's just like we used to do when you convert Celsius to Fahrenheit,
Yeah,
and if you're in an industry where you want things to sound colder, you usually say it's Celsius. When
right.
really, if you say it's it's 24 degrees Celsius, it's really 75 degrees Fahrenheit.
Oh
It's
yeah.
really kind of moderate, you know, and minus 15 Celsius sounds really cold,
Yeah.
but it's 5 degrees,
Yeah.
so that's so that's the kind of thing, that if you use it, your perception alone will think it's different because of
Right.
the way we've been trained, certainly in the United States, where we're using the system we use regardless, and differently from the metric system.
Right, exactly.
Anyway,
And that's where statistics and numbers can be used for ill gain, because you're kind of banking on somebody only partially reading it or not actually analyzing the data. It's like discount cards for pharmacy.
yeah.
You have a discount card, it says save up to 80%. And you
Mm.
know how many people are upset that they don't get 80% off?
This is up to.
It sure
Yeah,
does.
yeah,
But who reads
yeah.
those tiny little words up
It's
to?
right. Yeah, and it gets you. It's just I call it specmanship.
Mhm.
And it's also the perception of 1.99 makes you
Yes.
think it's one, but it's really not. It's $2. For example. Yeah.
Yeah, and some people would be more willing to pay $1.99 than to pay $2 for something. And that was like, I mean, I got to give them a little credit. That's a brilliant marketing technique to get
Yep.
to sell something. And I think we're the only country who does that, like stupid
Yeah.
pricing system, where we're also like, I know one of the things, if you ever read one of those lists where British people are complaining about American stuff, they're saying things like when you come and visit the United States and you want to buy something, the price is on there, so you think it's like 249, and then you get to the register and it's like 289 because of tax, because the tax
All right.
it's not on the sticker.
Mm-hmm.
You're supposed to just figure that out yourself depending on what state you're in. And
Yeah. And it's
uh
different. Yeah.
and that's why they do it, is because they're like, "Oh, I'm only paying 249 for this. That sounds pretty good." And then you get to the register and they're banking on you not giving up the sale because you already came all the way here and you need the thing anyway. So you're like, "Oh, it's a little bit more. I guess that's fine. Whatever." You know.
Yeah. And to the point, like if you're outside Orlando, you may
Yeah.
pay 7%, but you're inside Orlando, you'll pay 7% plus tourist tax.
Oh yeah.
So this is, yes, yeah. So that I can see where that would be confusing. So,
Yeah, it's confusing, and it's also like if you think about it too much, you can get mad.
well, the other part of that $99 thing is that everybody knows it.
Yeah.
Everybody knows it.
Oh yeah, we all
But
know. We all know it's
but
two
they we
bucks.
we still go, okay.
Oh, that's so much better. It's like $1. Who cares?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Nobody pays any attention to that.
yeah,
And they do that with house prices too.
yeah.
I mean, you're like, "Hey, this house isn't too bad. It's only like 240,000." It's like and then you get to the negotiating table and you're like, "Oh yeah, well, I'll pay 220." And it's like, "Okay,
Yeah,
what did you
yeah,
get?" And they're
yeah.
absolutely, no, no, no. I want that 20. I don't know. I haven't bought a house, but that it seems similar to me.
Yeah, there's a thing that goes when you buy, maybe not so much when you're buying an existing home, but like a new home, you'll get a price, but that price includes whatever's included in the house.
Yeah.
And oh, by the way, I'd like a roof, you know.
Yeah.
So it's,
It's like when you get a car and they're like, "Oh, do you want air conditioning in your
you
car?"
really want to? Yeah, okay. Well, listen, air conditioning didn't come years ago, so
That's
it's,
true.
but still, if you haven't had it, you don't know any better. You just, yeah. But it's true, there's always the hidden costs, and next thing you know, you're 229,000 or $250,000 home, particularly on a new home. There's always there will always be extra. I joked about it being a roof, but there are other things
Oh, sure.
uh, that will be hidden. Yes, you can have a patio out back, but if you want a covering for it, that'll cost you $20,000.
Yeah.
So it's just that's how you get slammed. So you start off a certain amount of money, and next thing you know, it's much higher. But when
Mhm.
you're in it, you're in it.
Yeah, we looked at that when we were looking, because we look at different options for homes. We're not buying anytime soon, but we looked and we were looking into container homes, which are cheaper to
Yep,
build because you
yep,
just buy the container,
right.
but they have the potential of being just as expensive as a stick-built home
Yep,
because you buy all those containers and then you have to put a slab
yep,
in there. So you got to set up the slab. You got to ship those containers to where they have to be. Somebody has to put them on the slab the right way. And then you have to make sure everything is level. And
then
you
you
have
get
to, yeah.
yeah,
Then
yep,
you have to cut it all up and you have to add insulation or not. And then you have to add structure to it. You're putting beams inside of it to make walls. You're running electricity, you're running plumbing just like any other house. And so it's like really what you saved money on is the outer walls of the house when you get a
yeah,
container home. But they're cool. I'd still get one.
yeah.
But yeah.
And it's the same thing with a mobile home.
Yeah.
You might start off with a really good price on the mobile home, but like you say, you have to have some place to. You got to buy the land, and then
Hmm.
you got to get the utilities, which cost quite a bit to bring them in.
Right.
Uh, so next thing you know, you've got a mobile home, which you're probably paying as much as a built home. And oh, by the way, they depreciate in value
Yes.
where built homes, appreciate in value.
Yeah.
So you have to think about that when you. But listen, we've regressed here a little bit on this.
I know, but it's
Yeah,
fun. I
it's
like
fun.
it when we do that. But anyway,
Yep,
that's okay. We can go forward.
yep. So you want to take the next one?
Yeah, so true or false, conspiracy theorists believe that a FEMA death camp is hidden under LaGuardia Airport.
In my wildest dreams, I wouldn't believe that was true.
No, it's false. I mean, the fact that conspiracy theorists believe it, totally true, probably.
Yeah.
And they believe that there's one under Denver International Airport. Actually, Denver International Airport, because I Googled it after I saw your bullet, has a lot of conspiracy theories attached to it. Sounds like a
Mm,
really creepy place. They say it's haunted and all this other stuff. Conspiracy theories are interesting to me because it's very easy to jump on board with them if you're not careful
mhm.
because they don't start off ridiculous generally. They start off with a kernel of truth
Yep.
and then they usually have like theories behind them that are very detailed. So the more details you hear, the more you're likely to sort of go, well, okay, I can't deny that because I
Right.
haven't looked it up and verified
Right.
it. So
Well, that's it. Yeah.
I could see how people believe them because it sounds like if you don't do any research or look up anything somebody has said, I could see how people be like, yeah, okay, that sounds right. And especially government conspiracies, because like,
Mm.
who doesn't want to believe that the government's doing something secretive? Who doesn't want to believe that you can't 100% trust your government, that crosses political lines. You know what I mean? It's not just like one type of person believes that the government isn't perfect. We all kind of think that. So it's interesting, very interesting. And the aliens thing, I think people want aliens to be true.
Mhm.
So those
Yeah.
conspiracy theories happen.
Well, that's like this. Actually, it's current events thing, is this thing about buying Greenland.
Oh
And
gosh.
at the outset, you look at it, you go, idiocy. But the thing is back in World War II, the United States did align with Greenland to protect Denmark and Greenland to protect them from the Nazis.
Yeah.
So there is some
There's
uh,
some
some
basis for what
some
they're saying. Yeah.
basis for it. It doesn't. You look at it, it says, okay, I can see where you think that that's the case. However, it's still silly to think you can take over any country.
Just
Um,
because you want to. Yeah.
just because, listen, it's in our interest and in your interest, and so those kind of things, like you
Hmm.
said, there's that kernel of truth,
Hmm.
which there's a reason there's a base in Greenland. And by the way, when I was in technical school, half of our class went to Thule, Greenland,
Oh,
and it was from, which is only the military do this, from alphabetically from A to MC,
huh,
went to Thule, Greenland. And so I
you were
didn't
good to
go, but a
go.
lot of most of half my class went, so, and it's a 1 year tour. It's an isolated tour.
Huh.
And in reality, it's Greenland's a misnomer because it's all ice. So it should be Iceland.
That is correct, but the reason that he called that was a Viking who did that.
Right.
I think it was Eric the Red.
Mm.
He named it Greenland because he thought it would be more appealing
Right.
for people to want to come there. It's the same as the Cape of Good Hope used to be called something else, and that it used to be called like I don't know Shipwreck Cape or something like
Shipwreck
that.
Alley or something.
Yeah, and so they were concerned that people wouldn't want to do shipping around the Cape of Good Hope because it had a name that sounded like you were going to die if you went there.
Right.
So they changed it to the Cape of Good Hope
Good
so that
hope.
more people would want to come. I mean, that's the same thing as Greenland. It's kind of funny actually. Have you speaking of things like that, like military bases and places like that, have you seen that show yet, Going Dutch?
No, I've seen the advertisement for it. Yeah.
It's actually pretty cute. It's Dennis
Oh, okay.
Leary, and he's like a multi-starred whatever.
Mhm.
He's like a seasoned military man who pisses off his superiors, and so they stick him in a base in the Netherlands, and they're a service base. They're not a combat base,
Hmm.
right? So the purpose of the base is to make cheese and do laundry and offer bowling to the locals. And also his daughter is in charge there, so that's not good. Because he doesn't talk to his daughter, and it's like a whole thing. It's a cute show. I recommend it.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, the Greenland thing made me think of that just because
Yeah.
of military bases in those sorts of areas of the world. But yeah, yeah, conspiracy theories, very interesting. Be careful out there, folks, if you decide to research any conspiracy theories, don't get sucked in. Whenever you're looking at something, I this is what I like to do. Whenever you're looking at something that is a theory, the next thing you should do is close the window, open up another window, and look at the opposing viewpoint. It's very easy to do. I've done it. One time I watched a documentary, and by the end of the documentary, I thought I was going to be vegan because it was so convincing that like I was going to die unless I switched to an all plant-based diet. Uh, and I was like, wait a second, wait a second, wait a second. Before I start throwing everything away in my fridge and buying more food, let me just go on Google real quick and put the name of the documentary and then put opposing view. And I found a lot of good opposing information and another opposing documentary. And this one person who had gone minute by minute to the documentary and said, here are the actual facts that they tried to present. Here's the actual stuff. And I was like, well, okay, I don't have to throw away all my food anymore. So I recommend folks if you start to read something about something that sounds a little bit weird but sounds true out there, just kind of open up a new tab and type in the subject line and then the words opposing viewpoint and
Yep.
make your determinations after you see both sides. And we'll all be happier.
Okay. You get the next one?
Yeah,
Yep.
I think this is the last one. True or false? The Declaration of Independence was written on animal skin.
I was going to say false, but it's true, huh?
It is true. And animal skin, when you say animal skin, it sounds one way. But if I said to you the word parchment, That
Yeah.
would make more sense for the
Yep.
Declaration of Independence. Yes. So parchment is sheepskin
Hmm.
generally. It's other animal skins too, but
Yeah.
this in this case it was sheepskin. And yeah, so the official final document said to be on parchment, which is made from sheepskin. A lot of people say that the declaration was written on hemp paper made from hemp. Some of the drafts were written possibly on paper that was made from hemp, but the final draft, the official final document that they think is the official final document, by the way, there's some dispute, is made on parchment, which is sheepskin. And hemp is funny because hemp obviously has some connotations.
Hmm.
But it was a dominant crop in the 1700s. It was a very versatile crop. It was a very hardy crop. It didn't deplete the soil the way that tobacco did because tobacco was huge in the 1700s. It
Yeah.
was, making them all their money. But it was versatile because you could make so many things out of the fibers, and in the 1700s, how do you get around anywhere? By ship. Hemp was used to make rope and sails, and it was used to make cloth. It was used for many things, and including paper. So, like almost all the things you used in the 1700s, you could make with hemp, and so it was a popular crop. And it also it gave the people in the area an alternative crop to tobacco for another reason, because tobacco was taxed, still being taxed by the British, even though they were growing it. And so if you grew a different crop it wasn't, that you came up with yourself and you cultivated yourself, it wasn't taxed the way that tobacco was. So it became like kind of a symbol of independence for a while. And then there was that little thing about the psychotropic effects of smoking it. But it turns out in the 1700s, not a lot of people smoked that kind of thing. I mean, they were just getting used to the idea of smoking tobacco. They were still using snuff and things like that. They weren't really smoking a lot of things back then. There are a couple of instances in sort of medical books where they would like crush the seeds, put them in liquid for a cough, but hemp really wasn't primarily known as any kind of drug back in those days. I think that was more something we figured out probably more in the last century, I would say, sometime around the 60s. Probably cheaper than pot, I guess. I don't know. I don't know things about these things.
No, no.
I led a very sheltered life reading Anne of Green Gables in my bedroom in my very rural town.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, so animal Declaration of Independence written on animal skin. It's not as weird as it sounds.
No,
No.
no.
So yeah, so those were our true or false facts for the week. I hope you enjoyed them. If you did like them, shoot us an email. Let us know what you think. Our email is mocciaverse@gmail.com. That's MOCCIAVERSE at gmail.com. If you can, if depending on how you listen to podcasts, if you go onto Apple Podcasts, subscribe to us and give us a 5-star rating. Why not? That'll help us get other people to listen. We can get some more visibility or audibility. Is it?
The
Is that
audibility, yeah. The audibility,
the?
yeah.
We'll be out there anyway.
Yeah.
If you do that for us. And that's something you guys can do for us if you enjoy it, or you can just like tell people. You can tell people that you listen. You can tell them it's really groovy and share the love. So with that, I guess you're gonna share the love using your love language, which is dad jokes.
I will do my level best.
Okay.
I once ate at a really fancy restaurant, Italian restaurant
Oh,
to boot. You know, it cost a pretty penny.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Where are average things manufactured?
Where?
Satisfactory.
Oh, that's good. It's a good one.
Yeah. Yeah. My boss said, dress for the job you want, not the job you have.
Yeah.
So I went in as Batman.
Batman. Perfect.
Okay. I went to the aquarium this weekend, but I didn't stay long. There's something fishy about that place.
Yes. Oh my God.
What do you call a sheep who can sing and dance?
What?
Lady Baba.
Oh God.
I know, that's even worse.
Ba ba
Are people born
ramama.
with photographic memories?
Mhm. Are they?
Or does it take time to develop?
Oh, develop.
Yeah. Why shouldn't you enter into contract with Wolverine?
Why?
Because of his retractable claws.
Ah.
I gave my handyman a to-do list,
Mhm.
but he only did jobs 1, 3, and 5.
Oh.
Yeah, it turns out he only does odd jobs.
Oh.
But
All right, guys, that's about enough I can take.
okay,
Yeah,
yeah,
that's the most I can take. So I guess
okay.
we'll see you in a couple of weeks. Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Daddy wasn't finding a powwow. Daddy wasn't finding a powwow. I've got a little cat. I'm very fond of that. I'd rather have a big bow.
Did you see my Facebook post I put about the words, by the way? That applies to you too.
Oh, okay.
It said like
I
it said somebody says, somebody saying to me, "You're always bashing people over the head with your fancy words." And my response is, "Oh, I think you mean bludgeon."
okay, okay.